Hello and welcome to Tournament Poker Project. My name's Jon.
And I am Tain.
And we are two recreational poker players. And this is our journey to try and get good enough at poker to be able to go and compete in the World Series of Poker, right, Tain?
Yep, that's the aim. Fingers crossed, it's getting there.
Getting there. It's the start of the journey. So if it's your first time tuning in, we are kind of right at the start of the journey. But we're pretty confident that we're going to be first and second seeded people of poker in the world, right, Tain? Me first and you second, probably.
Yeah, like the first mates to first and second place at the main event. Nothing much. I mean, it's only what 8,000. I'd say I'm better than 8,000 people.
Yeah, absolutely, definitely.
Easy.
So I'll see you at that final table at some point. But until then, let's crack on studying and let's get those skills that we need. So bankrolls at the moment, I've split it between live and online. So my online bankroll is at £156, and my live bankroll is back up to -10. What about you, Tain?
So yep, I am a massive £5 up in my live game.
Wow.
From 190 to 195 for anyone who's struggling with the maths on that. But my live is down a little bit. Basically, I just went on a bit of a bad streak. Well, not a bad streak. I just lost my patience with PokerStars. I had a few issues with their app.
Online. Did you say you're live or you're online?
Online, this one, sorry. So yeah, PokerStars. So my PokerStars balance went from about $29 down to $13, down to $2. But ACR's pretty much still at about $75.
Nice.
As I said,
it's early days. It almost feels like the money I invest in. It's such small stakes. It feels like the money I'm investing is more like to learn. And if we are start turning a profit, that's hopefully the start of things. Good things to come. But really, in the beginning, there is going to be some losses, isn't there, or breaking even and whatever. It's a learning curve, isn't it?
Yeah, basically, I've earmarked the 75 oddish ACR dollars that is money that will probably be a zero at some point. I'm not too worried about that. I'm hoping it isn't, but I don't expect that to stay neatly at $75 and then end up. Just because it's too wild.
Well, for me, my online bankroll now, because like on ACR it's like $215 or something. I'm playing stakes at so I've got like 40 buy-ins for the sit and goes. And if I play, so I'm playing the $5.50s, and if I play a big multi-table tournament, I'm only going in for like the $1.10s, because I want that bankroll to never go bankrupt. I want to start treating this like I would if it was a much bigger bankroll, and just playing at the stakes that kind of go with that bankroll. And they say something like, you need at least 20 buy-ins, but I'm playing like 40 buy-ins just to be safe. Look, we're not professional poker players. We are, like I say, just on this journey. So we're going to do some hand analysis now, which is what we do most weeks. We are learning, so don't take what we say as gospel, but there is some theory behind it. If you got any opinions or feel like you can add anything to what we've said, please do post a message in the chat. Nice. So are you ready, Tain? Are you ready to rock and roll with this hand?
I am. I'm looking at the table that you've shared with me. I'm looking at your Queen of Hearts, Jack of Spades, and I've got to be honest, Jon, I'm excited to play it.
Okay. Well, let me just for the benefit of the audience, I'll just talk through the situation then and the player count and whatnot. So it's a 9-handed sit and go, and all 9 players still remain. The blinds are currently 25 and 50, and there's an ante in there as well. So the pot starts at 120. We're sitting on a stack of 1,500, and the starting stacks are 2,000. So as you can imagine, 1,500 is a bit under average. There's a couple of people or one person on a little bit less than us, down at 830. And then there's one player, two to our left, that's managed to get up to double stack. But, the blinds are small. It's kind of still feels like anyone's game really at the moment. So we're sitting on the big blind with Jack of Spades Queen of Hearts. Oh, that's coming out really loud. How do I turn that noise down? Can you hear that?
No.
Oh, you couldn't hear it. That's fine. So the what is this? Cut off, hijack, low jack. A middle position player who's sitting on just a couple of hundred more chips than us raises just above the minimum to 105. 2 to his left, so the hijack position flat calls. Then we have a fold, and then the button calls, small blind folds, and then the action is on us. So just to recap there, we've had a mid position raise, like a min click raise to 105. 2 to his left, someone in the hijack position calls, the button calls, and then we have got to put in 55 more to add to our 50 blind to call, or we can fold, or we can raise. So what's your first thoughts here, Tain? What's your gut feeling?
I mean, there's never a fold. Even though your hand's less than premium, you're out of position for the whole hand, and it's 4-way. 55 into a 4-3-5 pot is pretty decent for a suited Broadway. Connected Broadway.
Yeah, we've got the odds, haven't we? We've definitely got the odds to call.
Yeah, I would hope that there's enough texture on almost every flop that you either hit well or you've got it to lay down. If you hit jack high, but it's jack 10, 8, two diamonds or something out there which you've not got, something like that, and someone all of a sudden starts, they bet hard and fast into you. You're not keen on that queen jack anymore, and you can save yourself some chips. If it is like king queen offsuit, it's a bit more risky because you all of a sudden you might be blocking the better flushes, things like that. So anyway, queen jack, I think
is there an argument for a biggish raise here? We've had a mid position open to 105 and then 2 callers. We're seeing a lot of weakness there, or they're not saying I've got something big. And it would be, if we raised here, it would be hard for the guy that opened from mid position, to continue, because he's got 2 players. It's like an even bigger than normal squeeze, or an even tighter than normal squeeze, should we say, because he's got 2 players left after him to act. If we raised it up to something like 400 or 500 here, that's about like a third of everyone's individual stacks. It'd be quite hard to continue with 2 players left after you to act if he hasn't got a hand that he's willing to go all in with.
Yeah, what I would ask is, what are you looking to achieve with a big raise that isn't
just folds?
Yeah, so it's basically the risk reward with getting 3 folds, and you're picking up the 4-3-5 that's in the middle at the moment, and building what would be a very large pot against someone who's gonna have most of your outs. So even when you hit a pretty strong board, their range is exactly that. In fact, you've got a worse part of the range, like you're at the lower end of the same range as them.
So what are you saying, that they've got a lot of aces and kings, and suddenly they're blocking your straights? And
but they'd also be playing like ace queen suited, ace jack suited, I'd imagine. They might even be playing the king queen, the king jack, just because at this level people are
as well.
It's just you'll have a massive pot in front of you, and it will be very difficult to play that very well. At the moment, you've got the big blind advantage, where your range is, you can represent a lot of low balls, and as soon as you raise it, you get rid of that. So if someone does come along, I mean, in live play, the 2 calls behind should be weak. You know what I mean? You can raise it up, and it's like, look, you didn't have a good enough hand to raise. You probably told yourself, oh well, I'm getting priced in, I might as well call. But online, I've seen so many players where you think, all right, a good squeeze here, and the original raiser, who's probably got the strongest hand, does fold, and then someone behind just calls again, even though it's like five
Yeah.
times the raise, and it's like, okay, well, what have you just called with? I have no clue. Considering it's a four-way pot and you've done nothing to isolate, what are you calling with?
Makes it very difficult to play post flop because you just don't know. You just literally don't know what they've got or what sort of range they've got. So, and as well, I suppose raising here, like you say, really bloating the pot. If you get a caller from anywhere, you're out of position. So you've built a massive pot where you can have like an SPR of like 3 or so, or maybe even, well, it'd be like 1 or something, 1.5, and you'll be out of position. It would be a bit of a disaster to raise, I suppose, for that reason.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of raising here.
No. So are we calling? We're not folding.
Oh no, yeah, you're calling. You're calling with the idea that you're probably throwing away 55 chips.
Yeah, all right.
A good percent of the time.
No, I like that, and I did opt to call there. So we go to a flop 4-handed, and the flop comes down Jack of clubs, 10 of diamonds, Queen of clubs. So we're in the big blind position, so we're first to act, but we've just hit top 2. So what are we doing with top 2 here? There's 2 clubs on the board. We don't have a club, obviously. The clubs are the Jack and the Queen, and we have the Jack and the Queen offsuit for top 2.
Cool. There's 2 things I would do here, and it would depend on the table. Considering it looks fairly early in the tournament, it's probably one over the other. So with no information, I would at the very least pot. There's a chance I might actually just jam.
Right.
In the hope that someone calls with a draw, which you are going to lose to sometimes, but it's a bad call for them to if they've only got a draw. But I think you will get a lot of calls from ace jack, ace queen, king queens, where all of a sudden your 2 pairs are lovely. There would be the slight worry of ace jack. I don't think ace jack has got that king adds enough outs for it to still be profitable at a jam. No, it won't. You jamming.
Just going back to the draw there you was talking about. I was just thinking then, would it be a safer? Because I've been thinking a lot about trying to play with a lower variance. Would it be safer to make a smaller bet, not to price in a draw, still make it incorrect for them to call, so still make that like a 3/4 pot size bet or maybe a bit less, whatever it would be, that you can kind of almost price them in, but it's still incorrect for them to call. Get them in, and then if the turn misses and doesn't complete that draw, and it's like a 2 or 3, like a complete blank or whatever, there's then much less chance of them completing their draw on the river than there was on the on the flop, because they've only got 1 card left to go, 1 card to hit their either end of their straight. And at that point, going all in, it would be safer. It would be lower variance, would you say?
It depends on how much of their range you think's going to be drawing.
Okay.
Does that make sense? So that's how I'd read that situation, where you want to maximize the value. So if even though you don't want to give them the correct odds, you want to do that for the most that they're going to call for. So if someone is calling with, I don't know, let's just say they've got ace 8, ace 9. Yeah. So let's say they've got ace 9. So they're either drawing to the king or the 8, with an up and down. In that situation, if they're going to call your jam, that's the best bet, because you've got the best hand at the moment. They're not getting the odds to call, and you're getting the maximum value. Like, you don't want to make it as close to that value as possible, because that's when they can start getting implied odds.
Yeah, no, I see what you're saying. But then could we not do that, and then just if their draw completes on the turn, then we just give up the hand? Is that obviously if they jam, I mean, like basically don't pay them off if we deny them that equity, and I don't know. I'm just toying with both options there, and I can't quite see what's the better way. It feels like the variance is higher your way because there's 2 cards left for them to draw. So if it's an open-ended straight draw, they've got 8 cards they could hit to complete, but twice because there's two cards left to draw. So Then you're looking at 16 out of 45. It seems like about a 1 in 3 chance they'll complete their straight. Whereas on the turn, if the turn misses and doesn't complete their straight, and you know that, at that point they've only got the 8 cards they can hit once. So then it's like 8 out of 45 or whatever. So then it's like a 1 in 6 chance. And at that point, I don't know. I'm just thinking about the thing. I don't know. I can see your point though, that you kind of want to get it done now while they've definitely not got the odds and that they're got more chance of chucking it all in against you. You know, I don't know.
Yeah, it's all about how certain you are of them being on that specific draw. Because if, say, for instance, the 3 of clubs comes out and you think, right, that's it, I'm done on a hand. The fact you didn't jam and you've said, all right, I've given myself a less of a risk. You've just given them fold equity. You've just given them the opportunity to pretend they've got the club when they haven't. They never had the club in the first place.
Yeah. Gotcha.
So they've now got better options to bluff, and you could have put them on a decision. Do you want to actually chase that draw, knowing full well it's going to be for pretty much all your chips? I think you're in a fairly strong position with if you do jam.
So what are you thinking then? So just to recap quickly, we've gone to a flop 4-handed. We are first to act. We've got Jack Queen offsuit, and the flop is Jack 10 Queen. So we've hit top 2. So obviously we're not folding. Are we checking here, or are we going to go straight in with a bet? What's your thoughts?
The second option that I was considering is if I thought that this group of players if they'd been a bit lively, every flop there seems to have been some action, and you're against 3 other players, I would consider a check with the intention of jamming any raise.
Okay.
The only problem is, depending on how lively, and it's a really wet board, it might already be all in by the time it comes around to you. And then you're kind of in a position where you have to call, knowing you're probably facing ace king. I don't think the 2 people who called behind have got ace king. So I am looking at the early position raiser, the initial aggressor.
Yeah, that's a really good observation. Like, you're not really going to be getting a flat call from the hijack and the button if they're holding ace king, are you? So you can kind of take that out of their range. But the initial opener, the one who's in mid position who opened to 105, he could have ace king.
Yeah,
good observation.
What I'd normally do is eliminate ace king, aces and kings when they're doing just a min raise, but I am trying to work that out of my game. I've kind of got to a point where I've realised that might not be a good blanket rule. There are people who do just over min raise for other reasons that's got absolutely nothing to do with the strength of their hand. They might think that it's a bit too wild, and if they just do a min raise, someone else will free bet them, and then they're free to 4-bet, getting all their chips in with their ace king, something like that. That I never gave them any credit for, thinking, oh, it's only a small bet, you can't have the best of it. Or maybe they're doing it on purpose, just do a small bet because it'll make it look like I haven't got ace king. Bit wild early position. Why would you do that? Knowing there's people right behind. I don't feel like ace king's likely. I feel that out of everyone's ranges, I'd pay someone off if they had ace king. It's more if they've got a pair of tens.
Yeah. The sets, that's the thing. I don't think there's many sets again in the 2 that called from the hijack and the button, but there are definitely sets within the opener's range here. He could easily have, a set of tens, jacks or queens, really.
Yeah. I mean, ace 10's another thing that wouldn't trouble me, but the fact that they do have so many extra outs compared to a lot of the other holdings. So we're blocking ace jack, king jack, things like that, where it's less likely they'll have that kind of hand.
Yeah, and I guess obviously we're blocking the sets as well, aren't we? Except for the set of tens, possibly.
Yeah, but the ace 10 is troubling me, where it's got any king, any ace, any of the tens still in play, things like that. and they're all live. Like there's no block that you've got on that either. It's tricky though. Four-handed, I don't have a default here because there's when I'm against that many players, my default is represent the hand that you've got and play it hard. Don't care that you might chase everyone out. There's 4 of them. Someone's hit that board, and you've got to try to find out how well they've hit it. You can't get tricky on this kind of board for me. So my minimum would be a 490 bet.
Okay, so you're thinking go straight in with a pot size bet. So we decide to bet about a third of pot. So just to give you my thinking on that, because it's quite different to your bet sizing, and it's to do with not so much like the strength of my hand. It's to do with the fact it's a multi-way pot. Now, one of the things I've learned recently about multi-way pots is when so if someone does that, like not a C bet, but they've bet on the flop, when you're defending it, you need to defend quite hard. You know, if you've hit a bit of the flop, if you've got middle pair, bottom pair, when the stacks are still quite deep as they are now, you want to defend that. You don't just want to let people take loads and loads of flops away unless you really hit it hard, or you're just not going to be involved enough and they're going to be able to exploit you. But when there are 4 players or even just 3 players, when it's a multi-way, the responsibility of defending against the bet becomes everyone's, right? So basically what that means is you don't have to defend as wide. So and equally you shouldn't defend as wide. Like if you've got on that particular flop there, if you've got a pair of 10s and someone bets and there's still 2 people left to act after you, well, then your 10s are so much less likely to be good. So you defend less. And because you defend less in a multi-way pot, the bet size doesn't have to be as big to gain the same fold equity. Does that make sense? So because you've got let people defending less, you just bet smaller and you're more likely to get people out. And the one that calls, well, then you're back to that heads up situation, and then you can start adjusting the bet sizes back up to be like a heads up type bet size.
Yeah, no, I can certainly see the logic. I'd have to get my head around how effective that would be. Like the intuition would say that when you bet small, there's enough players that someone will feel that it's only a small bet. I'm going to call it with something far more speculative than it should be. Mm-hmm. That might be incorrect. Some of it might be the level we're playing. It might be the players that are at the table.
Well, do we want someone to call though with a pair of 10s or a pair of jacks or maybe like I don't know. We kind of want a caller, don't we? We want to get a bit more value than everyone just folding here, though, right? Or would you see that's quite a good outcome? Just like take it down here and now.
No, I meant as in sorry. So you've raised it 150. Let's say the person who's next to acts, the early position original aggressor, just calls. You could be in a situation where now everyone's going to call because you've raised. It weren't big. They've called. Pots up to what would that be 790, and then everyone's going to call, and all of a sudden you've actually not. Well, they did fold, but then all of a sudden, you could have been in a situation where your hand's now really quite vulnerable because you're struggling to range people based on not an overly strong raise.
But if someone had just flopped a straight here with that ace king, would they not re-raise? Would they not make it a bit more obvious to you? Like, I mean, like obviously with 4 people still left in the hand going to the turn, you're still like, oh my god, what have people actually got here? And there's 2 clubs on the board, so someone could well be drawing to the flush. There's the 3 cards to a straight on the board, so you could have 1 or even 2 or even 3 people with different parts of that, and different cards could then complete straights all over the place. So. Yeah, I guess it's more vulnerable in that respect, isn't it? Because there's that many more combinations of hands that will complete on different cards. There's more cards basically that will then mean that you're behind. like there's more turn cards that would then mean you're behind. So yeah, I get that. I can see your point there, definitely.
Yeah. Now I like your explanation. It is something I'm going to look at and start practicing and trying out a lot more, because my bet is normally there's a lot of other players in. I need to, in the same way pre-flop, when you've got no callers ahead of you, you can do like 2 or 3 times big blind raise. But if there's 2 callers already, 2 limpers, you've kind of got to add an extra big blind on per limper. You haven't got to, but you can't expect to have anyone fold if you're just doing a min raise with 2 limpers already in. You just got, all you're doing is building the pot with everyone still to call. In fact, you're probably pricing in people behind you, and I see it similar to that. The more people in, the bigger the raise should be to achieve what you're after. Like for me, the biggest risk at this point isn't that, well, when you have 4, when you still got your 3 opponents in, isn't that you're not getting value for the hand. It's that the more people that are in, the less equity you've got. You want to be heads up, and you want the person you're heads up to then be giving you the value you're after. And you need to kind of be sure that you are chasing value, not inversely fluffing their value as they just let you bet into them. It's interesting. I do like it, because I'm not exactly sure.
No, me neither. This is the beauty of it, though, isn't it? Like there's 2 different ways to look at it, and then it's probably some kind of, you've probably got to consider both. You know, you want to get heads up, but equally the defending is less, so you can bet less, and it's there's probably somewhere in the middle, isn't there, that works.
Yeah.
All right then. So we end up betting 150 into the 490 pot, and we get called by the original opener. Then the other 2 that flat called pre-flop both then fold. So we go to a turn. Oh, sorry, go on, mate.
No, I was just going to say, is there any information we've gained from their just call here? So essentially, you've donk bet into the pre-flop aggressor. It's not a particularly big bet. They've got plenty of chips behind them to make a decent re-raise, and they haven't. Are we reading that as, when someone does that kind of what feels a bit weak, but the fact is they have called, so we have to assume, with 2 people to act still behind them, we have to assume they've got something in that board. Are they slow playing a monster? Are they speculatively calling a low bet with maybe the jack or the 10? Or are they planning to?
That seems most likely, because if they had say they hit that set of 10s that we considered, that they could have been opening with a pair of 10s and then hit a set of 10s. If they were faced them with a small raise of 3rd pot, and the board was so dynamic, you know, like 2 clubs out there, it's 10 jack queen, so 3 to a straight, all like well within a calling range, you know, surely they would want to be protecting their set of 10s against flush draws, straight draws. Surely they would re-raise that if they had something as strong as a set of 10s here. It leads me to believe that we are definitely ahead with 2 pair, and that it's exactly like you just said, and they've probably got a bit of the board, enough to call. Maybe something like, it could even be like ace 10, ace jack. I think ace queen or even king queen, I think they would be possibly re-raising. Or maybe not. Again, multi-way, you've got to treat your hands. This is another thing with multi-way that I've learned, is that your hands aren't as strong against 3 opponents as they are when they're in a heads-up situation. So before, you know, if you've got ace queen on a 10 jack queen flop, you've got a really strong hand heads up. But against 4 opponents, especially when the flop is so dynamic, it's not that strong anymore, and you should be calling and trying to get to a showdown cheaper and without bloating the pot too much.
While you're talking, one of the things that I'm trying to pin down is the value in combo draws. So let's just say they're kings. I feel that the raise under the gun essentially was a bit small for kings. You're not getting enough folds, and you don't really want a 4-way pot. they might have actually got themselves sticky, but they've also got an up and down straight. If they've got a king of clubs, got a backdoor flush as well. So just calling ain't too bad. The thing that's really apparent to me is if they've got the ace of clubs, even if there's not another club with it, that eliminates most people's confidence with the flush draw. So if someone has, I don't know, they have king eight of clubs, they know at the back of their mind, I'm not actually drawing to the best of it. That's not a bad position. That's the reason why they might not be too worried about protecting. So with ace 10 and the ace is the clubs, they're not worried about the flush. They're drawing to that straight themselves. They've got bottom pair, but the bet weren't too big for that to be an issue. It's got a lot of room to improve. That ace 10 wouldn't be a bad hand. There's other hands they could have that may have the same play. Jack 10, Queen 10. Both would probably raise what they did and then call the bet that you made.
Okay. So we're starting to range this guy pretty well here. Like we're starting to get a good idea of how strong his hand might be. So just to recap then, so we're now in a heads up position because the other two folded. We've just turned the 6 of clubs. So the board now reads Jack of clubs, 10 of diamonds, Queen of clubs, 6 of clubs. We are the hero in the big blind position. So we're first to act. We're out of position with Jack, Queen offsuit. So we've got top 2. We made a third pot size bet on the flop, which was called by the original pre-flop opener. And the turn has now come, as I say, the 6 of clubs. We're first to act. So what to do here, Tain? What are we thinking?
I'm not putting them on too many hands that have just made that flush. In fact, I feel that we've determined that the only hand really they're doing that with is ace 10 of clubs. There's a chance they might be a bit wild, and they've done this with ace 9 of clubs. So they're actually just playing the bottom part, the dirty part of the straight, but it is a combo, and they've now got the better of that. But for the rest of it, I feel that the hands they are playing, they've still only got one of the clubs, which might be the ace, and they've got the balls, but they haven't got it as strong as you have. Mm-hmm. So this is probably where I'd do the same size bet that you did do, 200 maybe, something like that. Okay. Because it's slightly more than the last bet. It's still continuing the action. So if you bet, say for instance, 400 on the last street, and then you suddenly bet in your bet sizing suddenly goes down to 250, it's quite visual that you're betting less, that you're a bit worried about something. Whereas even if it's 150 that only goes up to 225, it's still visual. I'm increasing my bet size each time. The pot's getting bigger. The flop, the river, you're going to have enough in the pot that we're both going all in if you've got anything here. So be a bit cautious in calling if you haven't got a decent part of it. But I could be wrong about that. Maybe this is the point where we're heads up. You make a bit of a stamp of authority, and we can improve to the nuts. That's the other part that I keep thinking, that we're not dead. As much as there's only another 4 cards out there, that's actually pretty good.
So even if they've got the straight or the flush now, we are okay. Well, it all makes sense. So we decide to bet into the 790 pot, 248. So
just high five there, John.
Yeah, mate. So just under a third pot, and the villain just flat calls again. So what do we think of his flat call here? What does that suggest?
Going back to the cards that I thought were most likely in their range. Again, if they've got the ace of clubs and you're betting into them, they actually now might be drawing to the nuts. It's not just a blocker. They're actually playing a live card here that's got potentially an ace as an out, a king as an out, any club as an out, another 10 as an out. I mean, they're not going to be aware of how many of them cards are actually live right now, but they could probably take a good guess that most of their hands are drawing to the best of it. Whether they feel that they were getting the odds or not, they're probably getting the implied odds if they feel that you're going to keep on betting at them.
Could I ask a question actually? And just going back to this bet, so we've bet a third pot. What are we trying to achieve here? What are we trying to get them? Are we trying to get them to come along with weaker hands? Is that the sole intention here, or is this more of a pro bet to kind of still see what have you got? It's starting to feel like, look, they've not got a monster because they'd have raised by now. So what hands are we trying to get to come along here? Is it all just pairs of tens, maybe a pair of jacks, they've hit a queen as well, or maybe that pair of kings? What are we trying to get to come along to the river here?
Yeah, I'd say all of them aces. So ace queen, ace 10, ace jack. I mean, hell to it, ace 6, but I don't think that's ever in their range at this point. No. Unless it was, no, it couldn't have been. There's king jack, king 10, king queen that could have been coming along for the ride. I feel there's a lot that wouldn't be too opposed to it. Kings, a pair of kings, I feel would be coming along for the ride at this point as well.
All the one pairs, basically. Yeah, I agree with that. We're just making a bet size that's relatively small. We're not too worried about the flush draw, so we've not gone above half pot size bet, which would give them the wrong odds to be calling and make them play an incorrect play to draw to the flush. We're just trying to get those one pair hands to come along and just trying to max our value out.
Yeah.
Okay,
I mean, so that is on the understanding that we could be dead and we could have been dead from the flop. But we think it's unlikely. But I would say there's like a 10%, maybe a 5 to 10% chance that.
Yeah, I really find it unlikely. Like if he had a monster, if he'd hit a straight on that flop, surely he would raise and protect against the flush when there are 3 other people in the hand. Like there's 2 clubs out there. If he had that ace king, if he had the set of 10s, same thing. There's a straight out there, there's a flush out there. Surely he'd be protecting a monster.
Unless they've got that ace of clubs. That's the thing. If they've got that ace of clubs, that all of a sudden makes this a really lovely hand to just play really weakly. You can really lure someone in. You can get the hook out. Come on him. I got the ace of clubs. You will never draw into that. There are times where they might even feel bold enough to push you off a weak flush because they've got the ace of clubs and they know that you're always going to be worried about it. I don't think you're deep enough for that. I think that would need a massive overbet. But
so what are you saying there? That on the flop, if they had
ace of clubs,
ace of clubs with another club,
no, even if they're on that flop, they've got ace of club. They've got ace king, but the ace is the club. So they've got ace king, ace of clubs. So they've already hit the straight, but they've got the club knowing that you're never drawing to the nuts. So you're not. You can. It's not that you can resign the flush draw, but you don't need to protect against it really because whoever is drawing to that is they're doing it to get lucky because they're not even drawing to the best of it. So more for them.
I see your point. Okay. All right then. So we raise that just under third pot, and we get a caller. We then see a river. So the river comes 2 of spades. So pretty much a complete brick. We've now got a final board of jack of clubs, 10 of diamonds, queen of clubs, 6 of clubs, 2 of spades, hero holding jack of spades, queen of hearts. So we've not hit any straights, we've not hit any flushes, but we've still got the top 2 pair. What to do here? The flush is on the board. There's still that possibility that he flops that straight. I'll be checking this down. I'll be raising.
For me, when we bet on the flop on the turn, and we're betting for value, and we're thinking certain hands would be coming in for the ride to this stage. If you're sitting there playing, let's just pull one out of the hat. You're playing ace queen. You got the ace of clubs, so you're not worried about the club draw. You haven't hit it, and at the moment, all you've got is top pair, top kicker. are you hoping to get showdown value, or are you hoping that you've just seen through two not particularly strong streets of betting where someone might be pro bet. You've told them, look, I've got something. I've hit the board. I'm never coming this far without a connection with what you can see in front of you. And everything to date tells us that their range 100% has every single card. Well, like not every single card. Their range has one of the cards in there. There's no part of their range that really doesn't have them cards other than maybe kings.
Sorry, what do you mean? That their range must contain, like they've hit a pair, basically.
Yeah, exactly that. Other than kings, they've got something on that board. They're not playing 8-9 to this point. Well, they've got straight at that point, so that's still in their range, I guess. But there's other stuff that anything that's not connected with that board, they've not got. They're not playing ace-8 and gang crazy at this point, unless they've got the clubs flush. There is a chance that they might have been silly and they love their flush draws, and they've probably not been too far away from the odds. If you jam at this point, then they 100% had the implied odds to call that flush with something like ace-8. And it's not out of the realms of possibility that you'd raise that early position, not overly a big raise, get calls. Club draw, someone bets into you, all right, I'll call this, and then you complete on the turn.
Yeah,
so that is all.
An ace-9, I really like for your reasoning there. Ace-9 would be perfect, like because you've got that open-ended straight on the flop as well.
Yeah, for me, and this might be just how I play. If I had ace-9, I would see if there was a bit more value, whereby on that flop, you might, for instance, have shut up shop as soon as that third club had come, at which point you've run out of value and you're only going to check or fold. So just doing maybe even a min raise on your flop bet, you might call that, and it's just that extra bit of value because you've got this combo. You've got what might be a flush draw, you've got the straight draw, and then when the flush comes, it doesn't matter so much that you shut up shop, but you didn't anyway. But ace-9 is definitely within their range, I feel, if it was the flush part of it. But everything in their range is either hit or heavily connected in one way. They're not doing what they're doing with a complete air. So we have to.
So we're in a situation where we've got some hands here in their range that beat us, that would have played it like this. We've got hands that we beat that would have played it like this. So we're kind of in a bit of a wow. Okay, like we've got showdown value. We've got that top two. It feels like 50-50 whether we've won it or not, almost.
The question I would ask is, are you going to call a jam if you check?
Well,
I
put that question to you. I've already had the burden of having to make that decision at some point in the past, because this is a hand I played. So, so what are you going to do?
So the question I'd ask myself here is, am I calling to a jam? At which point, jam yourself, because you at least get some fold equity. But the other option is, will a blocker bet of, let's just say you did a block of like 150, would that actually achieve enough that it stops them putting that jam in? So if you check to them, it shows complete weakness, and it just opens up any part of their bluff range. Let's say they were playing ace-9, not playing the flush draw. They were just playing the bottom end of that straight draw. They're just playing it really loose. Now they're sitting there with ace-high. You've just given them a bluff fold equity.
But it doesn't feel like they would have many bluffs in this situation. And actually, given the texture of the flop and the fact that they were the mid-position opener, it feels like they've got more hands that have got some showdown value, like what you keep saying, that one pair type hand, which would make if we check and they jam, that would make that quite surprising. It would be like, okay, well, they've really polarized now. They've either got, a busted straight draw, or they've hit the flush and they're way ahead. It would be weird for them to be jamming with one pair here. That it feels like they would just check behind and see if they've won, for the same reasons that we want to kind of see a showdown now, because they've got to be feeling like, well, I'm either ahead or I'm behind, which, you know, is always the case. But this really feels, well, it's one or the other.
Yeah, and then based on that, then where it's been, where up to this point, we're trying to extract value. So our betting has been that these hands that we're beating are coming along for the ride, and they're giving us extra bets. They might call another bet. They might call you all in because it's less than pop.
Yeah.
But
and it feels, doesn't it feel like that we've gotten beat here? The more I go over it, it's like, yes, there are hands that may have played it like this that are beating us, but surely they would have raised at some point, you know, like, and tried to get more value if they've already got the flush, or I don't know, they flopped the straight. Surely we would have seen some aggression, but we've not. They've just been really passively calling all of our pretty small bets. And I know that we've ended up with, you know, there's 1,200 in the pot, and each of us have got about 1,200 behind. But they've been passive. They've just been calling it down, you know, little calls at a time. And it's, I suppose, with the size of the pot, you could say, yeah, but they're kind of roping you in. It's a bit ropey dope, you know. They're just letting us bet into them while they call us down with an absolute monster. But it doesn't feel like that to me. It feels like you've nailed it with that. We've got one pair here. I mean, I don't know. I never remember my hand, so I honestly can't remember how this turns out. But it really feels like that. It just feels too passive for them to have a monster.
yeah, I think I'm inclined to completely agree that their behaviour didn't change when the flush came, and they've not seen enough hands against you to have any kind of read that says, yeah, what I really need to be doing is throwing away the very best hand, because if you then check to me and fold, all I've called is, what was it, a quarter bet of the pot, and that's the only value I'm going to get. The only reason you should slow play or check raise is because you've got a certainty that someone's aggressive enough that they're going to give you they give you the extra value later on in the hand, or they're going to come at you. But at this stage, when you've got no proper reads on someone, you've got no idea if they're going to keep betting into you, if they're going to shove all in, or if all of a sudden that bet's all you're ever going to get, and well done, they actually would have called a bet. If you'd have re-raised them in the last street, they probably would have called that. But now the last cards come, didn't help them, so they're folding. Well done, you've missed out on that extra value. It doesn't make sense to slow play when you've not got information that says that's going to work. Absolutely, you just get your value while it's out there. So
absolutely, yeah. You know what I really like now? Looking at this, I'm starting to feel like a hand like King Jack or King 10 makes so much sense. He's had that possibility of, you know, he's had the open-ended straight draw all the way along, but he's also got a pair. You know, it's really, really kind of, yeah, I'm going to call that. I could, you know, I might be behind, but I've got that straight possibility. Now the river's come and it's a brick. He's just left with the one pair, you know, but he's got that king, you know, something like that. 9-10, I don't think he'd be opening that pre-flop from mid position. But something like King 10, maybe even, probably not King Queen, but King 10 or King Jack, it's a hand like that starting to feel good. Ace 10 or Ace Jack, it's not got quite this, you know, it's got that gut shot to the straight, but he might have kind of raised that on the flop to try and gauge where he's at a bit more, or raised it on the turn to gauge where he's at a bit more. Like he might sort of feel a bit vulnerable with a bottom pair or middle pair when someone's like us was betting into a four-way pot. I don't know. Maybe I'm trying to hone down the range too much now. I think we're kind of at a good place with the feeling of it anyway, aren't we?
Yeah. I mean, I think where I've settled on this is that I wouldn't check, because not necessarily the bluffs in their range, but if they're sitting there with ace 10, no club, I would consider that so thin on such a wet board that it kind of is a bluff. I can't imagine they must know that they're behind any of your holdings, but it gives them the opportunity to bluff at the pot now. So I'm not too keen on checking. I'm not saying it's necessarily wrong because it's player dependent. A lot of players won't jam on the end seeing that weakness, but I do feel that a two, maybe let's say a third of the pot, a little 400 bet at this position, 420, would mean that it's enough that you've said to them, I'm going to leave myself such small that I'm probably going in here. But if they come over the top at you, it gives you a decision. That's when you really do need to sit back and think, okay, what hands would they have ever have come over the top? Because I can't see any hands other than something that's massive coming at you like that. I can't see ace queen coming at you like that.
No.
So that kind of bet.
Well, we actually opt to check here, and then to our dismay, the villain then bets into 1286 pot, 750. So just over half pot, or a little way over half pot, but 750 into the 1286. That leaves him just 450 behind. We have 1078, and we would need to bet 3/4 of our remaining stack, completely crippling our stack. We would be left with 5 big blinds if we make this call. So the check, I think for the reasons you were saying, was possibly quite a mistake. This has now become quite a tough decision. I mean, it looks really strong, right?
This is kind of now, I mean, I didn't say it at the time, but this is also one of the benefits of the smaller bet, where this re-raise would be impossible. They'd have to have gone all in. And now it's difficult for me to dissect whether they've not gone all in, because a jam at that point would have been the easiest move. It's the least clicks, it's the most obvious, it's the least mathematical. They have less than the pot, so just jam. Or no, I think you've got less than the pot. They had slightly over, but it's not the point. You just jam if you got the best of it, because if you're calling anyway. If you're calling 750, you would have called there all in. I can't see the difference. So I usually take that to mean that they're very strong, and I think I've been wrong about that. I think the opposite. I think that someone who's not willing to jam is hesitant. That 99 out of 100 players will jam when they've got the best of it, because they know that 750 bet's not going to do anything. If you want to lure someone in and try to get some, say you've got ace king of clubs, you were drawing to the royal flush, so you've already got the nut flush. You were blocking any straights, but someone, you're still getting bet at. You'd probably bet 200. You'd want to please call this little extra bet.
Yeah.
Your two pair might be good.
So actually, maybe, well, I don't know. Maybe he knows we must be pretty strong, but he's sitting there with the nuts, or
No, I don't trust that 750 bet at all. I feel they've left themselves. If you look at that 450, I feel they've left themselves with what they would consider the bare bones to continue in the tournament.
9 big blinds, like 9 big blinds. They can come back from that. A double up. They can do one all bit, a double up, and they're kind of back in it. 18 big blinds or whatever will be back in it once they've doubled up. So you could be right, and maybe this is how people play. They're like, well, I'm going to take this stab at it, bet as much as I can to get him off the hand, because I know I'm behind now. So that's kind of as much as I'm willing to do that may get that fold I need. But if he does go over the top or call when I lose, then I've still got enough to continue in the game. I like that thinking. Yeah, that could well be what he's thinking there.
It's only a small part of their range, so I wouldn't consider it the be all and end all. But someone with tens might be that cautious. They might think I've only got a set, not knowing that you've got you beat. But they've definitely seen your check on the your check on the river, considering the river was a brick, your check to them, they've read as, okay, you tried a couple of streets of half-ass bets. I haven't folded. Now's my chance to shine. But I don't feel that their bet size is it's not going to get enough calls to make it a good value bet, and it's not going to get enough folds to make it a good bluff. So I'm not sure where they're at with it.
No, it is confusing, but I like your thinking there. Like, if they're obviously ahead and they know it, that's too big. They want us to be, they wouldn't bet 3/4 of our stack to hoping that we call it. You're right. They bet 200. They bet 300. Something that they know that we're going to have to call and pay them off. So it doesn't feel like a value bet. And if it's not a value bet, well, then what the hell is it? It's not big enough to be a bluff. But maybe it's maybe it's a scared bluff, like I'm betting over half the pot. Maybe that will get him off of whatever he had. And if it doesn't, I'm still in. Yeah, I'm starting to be convinced that you've nailed this, and actually this guy has just done a really poor bluff attempt, like a bit of a half-assed bluff attempt.
Yeah. The only thing I'd like to think through is, what of their holdings would they now be betting this with if they thought you were just chasing the straight? So let's say you had King 4 and they thought you were chasing a 9 or an ace to complete your to complete your straight. I don't know what they're thinking about the clubs. Let's just ignore that. Or you might have been just one card to the club. So they feel that you've missed your straight, but just to be sure, they're throwing some chips on the end because, just in case you had that 2 or something.
That would be a particularly bad play, because what you're saying is they know we've not even possibly got a pair, or like we've missed a straight draw. So the value, they can't expect us to call with anything. And the fact that there are going to be hands in our range that do beat them, say they've got that pair of jacks or whatever. It just seems crazy. They surely wouldn't be doing that. They must realise that if they're that far ahead and all we've got is like king high or something, then we ain't calling that. We're probably not even calling 200-300, and they'd have to go really low. And all that the 750 is going to do is be like a massively way over the top way of getting us to fold a hand that's already worse than them. Like, it just doesn't add up.
No, I agree with that. Cool.
So what do we do then? Like, what do we do? We're starting to sound like you're convinced we're just going to call this and see what happens.
Yeah, I don't feel there's any value in jamming because you're already beating the hands that would fold. And there is the slight possibility they are doing this with better than you. If you call, I think there's a good strong chance you're winning. And as much as you're only leaving yourself with 300, it's more just there's just no point in putting that last bit in. You're kind of resigning that to. No, wait a minute. What am I saying? No.
Yeah, because it's such a small amount extra. If we are ahead and this was the half-assed bluff attempt or weird value bet or whatever he thinks he's doing, then that little bit, if we're quite convinced we're ahead, then that little bit extra he would have to call off, right? There's no way he'd fold it.
Well, that's what in their range are they then? So let's say they've done their 750 bet with ace 10. Mm-hmm. Are they calling that last 300?
Yeah, they are, man, definitely. Because look, the pot's 2,000. When we put that extra bit in, it will be over 3,000, and they would have to be putting in like 300. They'd have to put in an extra 300 to potentially win that 3,000. I think they're doing that with bloody even like an ace high.
Yeah, king high.
Yeah, king. Like, I think they do it king high. I reckon. Yeah, I reckon we do. I reckon if we're, I reckon we just chuck it in. Chuck it in. That's my final answer.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I think you've been value betting the whole time, and if we feel that the flush and the straight are off the cards, well then 100%. The only hand you're worried about is tens. Pay it off. You know what I mean? If they've got tens,
Okay.
right, well done. Or let's just say that they've got jacks or queens, which we've been blocking, but there's two of each out there. Just pay it off. Who cares? It's one of the hands.
Yeah. All right then. So I actually opted to call.
It's not the worst.
No, it's not the worst. And now that we've spoke it through, it seems we may as well have just put it all in, because if we feel like we're ahead, we're ahead. So we call, and let's see what happens.
They don't show their cards.
Hey,
10. We had them on that.
So the villain flips over King 10, which makes absolute perfect sense. So
I like that we had that.
We had that. We were definitely saying it, wasn't we? Because that was that open-ended straight draw plus a piece of the board. So it had that one pair hand. Yeah,
I gave them too much credit with far too much credit, expecting a club in their hands. But maybe that would have elicited much more of a stronger. They didn't have enough of the board, even with the straight and the bottom pair, that they're happy to get a card for free, not for free, for cheap.
Cheap. They don't want to raise it. But we deduced that. It's like their calls were very telling of the types of hands they would have, and we ranged them perfectly. Like that was particularly good, Tain. Like we really nailed that hand.
I'm not completely convinced that they'd have called the jam. I think they would have called it enough times. I still think that I think we're right. The jam was the right move. I think there's enough times they're calling that jam, and they probably are calling it with the King 10. They're just thinking, but what can you do? But that wouldn't make a difference if they fold. You still win the hand. It's not like you've thrown away value. They've folded instead of called. You're getting to see their cards, and you get that bit of comfort in knowing that you were good. You made the right moves.
Yeah.
Do you know what I really love about this hand as well is that about 6 months ago I would have seen this and said to myself, "Oh, look at them! They got a bit too clever with two pair. Look at that ball. It's got straights out. It's got straight out there, flush out there. But some people, they just can't throw away two pair. They just got a bit lucky, didn't they?"
Right.
Not thinking actually.
What about his bets and his calls? What did that mean for his range? And that's what it's all about, isn't it? It's using all of the information to range him.
And how soon the ace king was off the cards. It's like, he ain't got ace king. Like with pure confidence. Now the ace king ain't in the range.
Definitely. Good. Well, that feels like a bit of a leap up. For me at least, and I think for you as well. It just feels like okay, bring it on, baby. That was good. There was a lot of action there that my past play would have been worried about, right? But talking it through, or it would have been counterintuitive. So things like not betting big on the flop, not betting big on the turn, maybe either a small bet or just check raising on the river. That now you see it, now you think through what their cards are, what their range is, the ones that we've definitely said are not in their range, the fact that we've eliminated almost all their bluffs. It does give you a lot more thought of actually there's times that I'm over raising because I'm worried about calls when I shouldn't be, because I'm value betting. Like why am I worried about calls in that position? Bring them in. Bring along those one pairs, bring along those draws, and see what unfolds. And it might mean you have to make a nitty fold, and it's really annoying. But when you don't, which with an opening straight draw is going to be like 60% of the time, you're going to be making the money. You're going to be getting your value. Yeah. Well, look, any final thoughts before we wrap it up, Tain? No, I think that's good. I think if we wanted to make the pod another 2 hours,
I'd really love to go through their way of playing against what your range would have been, because they've got the kind of hand that I feel their play was bad, but I don't know how bad.
Okay.
And it'll be.
I think that sounds good. I think we should do that next time. I think I think we do it, and it might be that I have to kind of. Yeah, no, we can do that. We can do that. We'll do another pod from the other way around and see were they playing bad, or is it just one of those things? And actually, he played well, but we played well as well, and our cards beat his on that occasion. Yeah, that would be really interesting.
Yeah, I mean, the fact is that we read their hands so well that the truth is, by the end of it, we could have got all their chips with a lot of confidence. In fact, by the end of it, I was 95% sure. I think it was only 5% I had at the back of my mind where they might have been playing a monster or the pair of tens, for instance, a bit too weak. I don't think they ever would. Like, for instance, the flop call with a pair of tens, I just can't see it. But how could they have changed their play to have hidden them weaknesses? Why was we so sure? Because they were just cool. Should they have raised? Should they have protected it? Should they have defined their hand a bit better? They had position the whole time, yet it's as though that meant nothing. They kind of yielded the position to no value.
Yeah, I think the open-ended straight draw and the fact he had so many outs, it was like, yeah, like he's probably thinking, well, I could be ahead anyway. I've got a piece of the board, plus I've got this, this straight draw. It does seem like I think I'd probably be calling that a little bit as well. See what happens. Maybe I'll hit another 10. Maybe I'll hit my king for 2 pair. Maybe I'll hit, my straight. It's whether it's right or not is that's definitely one we could have a look at, I think.
Yeah. I mean, I think the thing that we'd definitely say is that the bet on the end by them was silly. That was they've just leaked 750 chips for absolutely no gain.
It doesn't seem right. They should have just checked it down and accepted defeat, or maybe even got lucky and realised all we had was ace high or something crazy, or just a just a king. God knows what. Maybe we were defending with like king 7 suited, something like that. And we just had the open-ended straight that didn't get there. But yeah, who knows? Yeah, it'd be good to delve into that.
Cool. But otherwise, good hands, enjoyable.
Yeah. Well, look, always a pleasure, Tain.
Nice one.
I'll see you next time.
Yeah, see you next time. Thanks for listening.
Yeah, cheers everyone. Take care.